What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the NerdBall Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host, dendrologist specializing in the conservation of the extinct Robert Woods, and astronaut aboard the Pitts 8 Moon Expedition, Pete Rogers. And I am joined by a fellow nerd, the lead saxophonist for Deami Brown of the Downtown Funky Crown Band, and the doctor who prescribed Aaron Rodgers naturopathic COVID immunization, working girl Jordan Smith. Jordan, I have to say, I'm kind of glad that we didn't record on Wednesday night and instead we're recording Thursday night because it gave you more time to, I'm sure, collect Marvel quotes in a homage to the Eternals, and B, because we finally know where Odell's landing, and sadly, it's neither with my Patriots or your Packers.
I did not collect any quotes this week, but I'm sure I can just drop some references here and there. It does kind of suck that Odell chose to go somewhere else, but this is not the first time that a big name wide receiver has flirted with the Packers and ultimately decided to go to a different location. And I don't know, we'll see what happens. From a fantasy standpoint, I don't know if I like this all that much for the Rams.
No, it's not. And we'll obviously dive into it when we get, because we might even see Odell play this week because the Rams play Monday night against the 49ers. And that might be enough time for Odell to at least take the field in some capacity. I have no idea what that will look like, but on a quick fantasy note, I don't love it. We've obviously seen like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been able to support 3 different top 24 wide receivers in fantasy this year with Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. But like I said at the top of the show with my now extinct Robert Woods Forest, it really kills. I mean, Cooper Kupp is a locked in wide receiver 1. I think his 30% target share will obviously decrease, but he's still a locked in top 12 wide receiver. Robert Woods and Odell, I would say now both kind of flirt with wide receiver 3 status. And I know a lot of people were kind of saucy on Van Jefferson, and Van Jefferson was seeing some work with Deshaun Jackson getting released, but that's dead in the water now. Van Jefferson's is nothing more than a dynasty piece that you stash on your bench for a later point in his career.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think Van Jefferson is going to see a little bit of a like Tyler Johnson role. The Johnson season, Tampa Bay. And I feel like that'll be the ultimate comp here is with 3 really good wide receivers on one team, 1 pretty good quarterback. And I haven't had a lot of time to sit with it because it's been like an hour or 2 since Odell or since it was announced that Odell signed. But I do mention Tampa Bay later. And I think if I had to rank the 6 main wide receivers on each team, it would go Cooper Kupp at 1, but then Godwin, Evans, and Antonio Brown in some order right after him, followed by Robert Woods and then Odell. I would
rank Woods over Odell at this point. Right. As of right now, I would still rank Woods over Odell. But yeah, you're right in the sense that those 3 wide receivers in Tampa are all elites, and that is what's allowed them to be all perform at such a high level and such an efficient level with with even diminished touches. And so it'll be interesting to see whether or not that rubric or that template can translate to LA with the Rams. But obviously we will touch on it later maybe, but we also aren't here to just pontificate about Odell's future in Los Angeles for the rest of this podcast. Instead, you obviously are here to listen to some starts and sits for week 10 and some game picks, of which, Jordan, we got back on the horse. It was all okay, even despite it being like this wild upset driven week 9. We both went 9-5, which honestly I'm pretty proud with. I'm quite pleased that we were, and we split the right games. We were both wrong on obviously we had the Bills. No one had the Bills losing to the Jaguars, and neither of us had the Cowboys losing to the Broncos. But we also both split the 2 games that we were opposite on, which if I were a good host, I would remember off the top of my head. But 9-5 for both of us. I'm 84-53 on the year. Jordan is 87-50 on the year. And of course, we will get into our picks for week 10 and continue to track them. we normally start with Thursday Night Football. We're coming out. Thursday Night Football is starting in I don't know, 3 hours. so I was going to give you this whole spiel about how this is could be Rashad Bateman's breakout game. And I knew Jordan was going to support me on that because there are very few people in professional sports Twitter who love Rashad Bateman more than Jordan Smith. So instead, I'll just say, I hope my Rashad Bateman take is vindicated by the time you listen to this show. And I hope you started him, but we'll just do picks for Thursday night, since we can still go on record. The game is not started yet. So we can go on record with our picks, even if this podcast comes out middle of the game. I'm going to pick Baltimore to win. They just are clearly the better team here. So I don't feel like it's too much of a decision.
Yeah, this game had the potential a couple of weeks ago, but now I'm just in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And by a couple of weeks ago, I mean before the season started.
I mean, back in the preseason. All right, so let's get into Sunday's action then, and we'll start with Buffalo licking their wounds, nursing the gashes that the ferocious Jaguar ripped into their side against a New York Jets team that they should be able to take full advantage of, Jordan.
Yeah, this is kind of a diary entry to myself about playing Elijah Moore against Buffalo, because that's one thing that I'm seriously considering. But I have to exercise caution here because since Zach Wilson went down, he's kind of been coming on weirdly. I don't know if that's a product. I haven't watched New York Jets football that closely, but I don't know if that's a product of Mike White just having a better connection with him. Or perhaps Mike White is just a little bit more. Zach Wilson gives you much more YOLO plays than Mike White. Let's just say that. So against the Bills, I'm a little bit worried here because they've allowed the fewest points to wide receivers in fantasy this season. They've allowed the fewest yards. They've allowed the fewest touchdowns. And I do have to mention, too, this isn't really a scheduling thing either. It's not like the Bills have been repeatedly beating up or getting their tails beat up on by Jacksonville. They've played some elite wide receivers, including Tyreek Hill, Terry McLaurin, AJ Brown, and of course Brandon Cooks.
The elite of the elite, the creme de la creme
out of all four of them. And then Buffalo just overall is number one by defensive DVOA, number one against the pass, number three against the run. I just would be a little bit worried here. Obviously, last week we've seen that, I don't know, anything can happen with this Buffalo team, but their defense was still solid. They kept Jacksonville at bay. It was the offense that was not pulling their weight.
It was Josh Allen on Josh Allen crime that literally won the game. It was insane to me that narrative going in, that of course you have to hype up, right? The fact that Jaguars defense or outside linebacker Josh Allen going up against quarterback Josh Allen. And then not only do you hype that matchup up, but Josh Allen, then the defensive Josh Allen goes on to sack offensive Josh Allen, intercept offensive Josh Allen, and force a fumble on offensive Josh Allen. That was a truly incredible performance by Josh Allen. And he proved who the better Josh Allen is. And we will make sure to note of that as forever. I mean, I think when offensive Josh Allen retires, we will always remember who the better Josh Allen is. I like your point about Elijah Moore, because it's really easy to, especially when it's a player who, if you've in a redraft league, you probably drafted Elijah Moore, you held on to Elijah Moore, and you're this is what I did with Michael Carter. So I can speak to this, where it's oh my gosh, it's going to happen. His breakout's going to happen. It's good breakout's going to happen. And then it happens. And you're awesome, plug him in. He's at least my wide receiver 3 for the rest of the season. Coming off of that huge game against the Colts, it's easy to do that. But you should be nervous against the Bills, especially given the fact that we all love Mike White here, but at some point Mike White's going to turn into a pumpkin, maybe ? And against the Bills defense that's elite, one of the best defenses in the NFL this season by all metrics. It seems like a likely spot for that to happen. I mentioned Michael Carter because I have him. I am also tempering my expectations for Michael Carter this week because of just how good this Bills defense is.
Yeah, it's a shaky week. I just particularly love the Josh Allen violence. I thought that was fun to watch.
Monitor for those out there, monitor Zach Moss's status. Because if Zach Moss is out, you should put Devin Singletary in every single one of your DFS lineups this week, because Devin Singletary is about to have a RB1 workload against a Jets defense allowing the most points to running backs. And it will be glorious to behold. I am calling something really bold, Jordan. The Bills winning here. I know the Bills 0-1 in the last week, and the Jets are also 0-1 in the last week, but they were a much closer 0-1. But I'm going to call the Bills winning this one.
Well, I hope the Bills have learned how to rush the ball over the past week. So I'll still take the Bills, but it might be a better game than I think we are anticipating. I think on an individual basis, it might be a little rough for people, but I don't know. It could be a rock fight just because it's an AFC.
No, we're going to pull that quote. We're going to pull that quote and we're going to spread it all over social right when Josh Allen throws his 5th touchdown in the opening 10 minutes. We're going to pull the quote. Jordan Smith says this game could be sneakily interesting and everyone should pay attention to it as the Bills run away with it 53-0.
The Jacksonville Jaguars have me down bad. That's what's happening.
That's what's happening here. Let's move on. Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Washington to take on the football team. And while you should be firing up whatever wide receivers are healthy in Tampa Bay, you should not be doing the same with Antonio Gibson in Washington. He is still dealing with a shin injury, which already is not a good thing when you're going up against the best run defense or one of the best run defenses in the NFL. He's only rushed for 3 touchdowns this year and has only had over 70 yards once rushing, and that was back in week 1. He's severely limited from a snap count since week 5, playing under 42% of snaps. And the Bucs defense, like I said, ranks 3rd in our NEF rating. They've allowed the 2nd fewest yards, the fewest touchdowns, and what they're susceptible to, if you want to move or utilize running backs against Tampa, what they're susceptible to is pass catching. They've given up the 5th, or the tied to giving up the 5th most receptions and tied for the 3rd most touchdowns through the air to running backs. Now, unfortunately, you would think, oh, great, Antonio Gibson, wide receiver in college, turned running back in the NFL. He'll get it done through the air. Well, not going to happen, because as JD McKissick, who is Washington's pass catching back, he's averaging 3.5 targets per game, while Gibson's averaging 2.6. It's not a good matchup for Antonio Gibson. And this isn't even a fade. Sometimes I mean, I've got plenty of fades where you're like, if you can get away from this person, you can. I would sit Antonio Gibson, and I wouldn't have him ranked anything higher than a middling flex option this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's like lingering injury issues with Antonio Gibson, but I would definitely put him in the category. And I'm not saying he has the same playing style as these 2 running backs, but I would put him in like the Miles Sanders, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire grouping of guys who have
not a great group to be in.
They're running backs that you draft in the 1st round of your redraft leagues, hoping that you got them, like you got your league. You got the hidden gem in the 1st round that's going to carry you to the championship, but we need more. Obviously, these guys are like 2nd to 3rd round selections at best at this point.
Yeah. Antonio Gibson has been. I'm glad that I kind of stayed away from him this year in redrafts, because he's been obviously a major letdown. I am going to pick Tampa in this game because, like I said, with my quick allusion to the starting your Bucs wide receivers, Washington secondary is abysmal and has given up a ton of passing game work. And I have a feeling Tom Brady with Mike Evans, maybe Chris Godwin, maybe Antonio Brown back, but at the very least, Mike Evans and Tom Brady, that duo, and maybe Brashad Perriman is back in Tampa. Brashad Perriman goes off for 85 yards and a touchdown. But I think this passing game will be way too much for Washington to handle. And so Tampa, I think, is going to win this rather easily.
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay is going to take Washington to the woodshed. This is a game I don't think is going to be very good to watch.
All right, perfect. So Buffalo's going to blow out the Jets, and Tampa's going to eke by Washington in like a nail biter.
It's going to be on a last-second field goal.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to Atlanta at Dallas. A good game, Jordan. This could be because the Falcons are playing some good ball recently.
Yeah, I almost put the last nail in the Matt Ryan coffin earlier in the season, but I guess maybe
Matty
rising
Ice?
from the dead, maybe a combination of Arthur Smith figuring out what to do with Kyle Pitts, who has been absolutely a top 3 tight end the past couple of weeks. But Matt Ryan had a really good vintage game last week against a really good defense. He dropped 30 fantasy points. He had 343 yards. He was 23 of 30 against the third best defensive team by DVOA and the New Orleans Saints. Dallas, in turn, did not have a very good week last week. I don't think that was really a product of Denver playing good defense. I kind of think Dallas just crapped the bed. Just one of those games. A lot of teams crapped the bed this week. Like, nobody wanted to play, it seemed.
As someone who just got stockpiled with like over 200 diapers just got shipped in the mail, I'm well prepared for a team crapping the bed. And so if any team does it again, we on the show will be ready for it.
Yeah, you got to be prepared with the diapers and the wipes if you're going to take an absolute shit onto the field. But anyway, Dallas has allowed the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. So while Trevon Diggs has been just taking the ball seemingly directly out of quarterbacks' hands, and everybody else, like Micah Parsons, has been contributing in a really good way for Dallas, they're still susceptible to being scored on. Additionally, I want to say look for a bounce back game from Dak Prescott. Last week was a little rough coming back from injury, but I think he gets it on track. It's not like Dallas is playing, Atlanta's defense is playing very well. Except AJ Terrell has been pretty really good defensive back that Trevon Diggs has been overshadowing. But as far as second year defensive backs go, AJ Terrell has been pretty good as well.
Yeah. And I love that you're giving Matty Ice some props, because he actually, in my roast and ghost column this week, he's my roast for the quarterbacks, because you're right. Like, he's quietly, if you take out his game against the Panthers, which obviously you're picking and choosing your stats, but against the Panthers in week 8, he threw for 146, 1 touchdown and 2 picks. But outside of that, over the last 5 weeks, he's had 4 games of over 280 yards and 2+ touchdowns. Like, he's been playing really good football since week 4, and against a Dallas secondary that hasn't really, like you said the 6th most. I think, yeah, they're giving up like the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. 7th. Damn it.
Close. My
whole point is now ruined. That like he seems like another lock for like a top 5 finish. Also, I have to do it. Kyle Pitts, since week 5 in the half-point PPR, tight end 4. I just need him to finish tight end 3.5-point PPR, so my early rankings of him at the beginning of the season are justified, and I look like an absolute genius. That's all I need. That's all I want. All I want in life. Kyle Pitts.
Let me tell you, having Kyle Pitts on your fantasy teams, especially I have one of them in a dynasty league, it feels good, honestly. It feels amazing.
Yeah, I'm very upset that I do not have him in dynasty, because he feels like that. I think everyone got super excited about. I mean, still, Jamar Chase deserves all of our praise and our excitement. I think I'd still rather have Kyle Pitts than Jamar Chase in dynasty, just because he's putting up wide receiver numbers at the tight end position, which is absurd. All right, pick this game. I'll let you go first.
I'm gonna go with Dallas. I just think they're still a good team, and they get back on track. Last week was a little bit of a blip for them.
Yeah, I think if this was in Atlanta, I would pick the Falcons, but I will go with you as well. I think it's going to be a really good game. I don't think that this is going to be, now I'm putting my own curse on this game. I don't think that this is going to be like a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I think Atlanta's going to come up and like put up a really good show. Which means like Russell Gage maybe is a sneaky flyer because he saw 8 targets last week. But yeah, I'm still rooting for Dallas. Let's move on to the New Orleans Saints heading to Tennessee to take on the Titans. And if you're looking for a deep sleeper start, my friends, well, let me direct you into the Deontay Harris. Deontay Harris rostered in 12% of sleeper leagues. He's my stream of the week over on my wide receiver rankings. He has been Trevor Siemian's go-to target in the 2 games that Siemian has played. He's seen 15 targets during that span, leading the team. And the Titans defense this year has surrendered the most targets, the most receptions, and the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. He's got a high workload in a plus matchup which to me, I feel like it's a lock to return you solid flex start. And I just think that is someone, if you were got people on buys, if I know for me, this week I have like with Michael Carter out, like I'm trying to figure out how to fill 2 of my 5 flex spots in my home league. And I think Deontay Harris is going to be a guy who I'm going to take a flyer on because I just think that the workload is there. The matchup is there. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes with like 5+ catches and for 80 some odd yards and maybe a touchdown in there. So deep play, Deontay Harris.
Yeah, I have to be a little negative on this one just because
How dare you?
I think I'm just overcompensating for disparaging Tennessee because I do recall saying that Tennessee was kind of fake tough.
I feel like we've said this at every point. Every Tennessee game, we're like, Tennessee, nah, they're not good. They're not good. And then they've just like beaten every good team in their way.
Yeah, I mean, but I do have to give props to their defense. They're creating an insane amount of pressure, whether that's with Jeffrey Simmons or Danico Autry, who are like almost leading. Each of them are almost leading the league in pressures from the defensive tackle position. Like they're not even edge guys, but they're like wild. Right at the top of the list. The back end, usually they have some problems, but they've been all right. Like they haven't been terrible. So I guess with just new information breeds new opinion. So I got to give Tennessee a little bit more of a pass on their defense, but I do love a sneaky sleeper pick that's just getting peppered with targets. Like that's one of my favorite things. That's the only thing you should really look for in fantasy.
You can't say no to that.
Yeah.
Can't say no to that. The Titans defense is so weird because like I said, they're just giving up tons of points to wide receivers. And yet their defense is itself. I've actually gone and added their defense to stream this week in fantasy in my home league because they are like averaging well, they only had 1 sack against the Colts in week 8, but they're getting like at least 2 or 3 sacks a game. And they're getting at least 2 or 3 interceptions and takeaways a game. And they've had 3 stretch games against Kansas City, the Colts and the Rams, where they've all scored like over 12 to 13 fantasy points. Like this defense it can be taken advantage of, but they make really big splashy plays, which translates to really good DST scoring. So they are another defensive perk. I told you to start the Patriots defense last week and they got you a shit ton of points. I'm telling you to start the Titans defense again this week because they'll get a shit ton of points. Also, make sure you go and monitor Alvin Kamara's status because if Alvin Kamara doesn't play, Mark Ingram is rostered in 47% of sleeper leagues, and that boy is locked in for like top 15 running back production. So
yeah, I would keep an eye on. This is going to sound like the worst take ever, but I don't think he's a good player anymore, Adrian Peterson. But I'm going to take a walk down Narrative Street and say you might see that image of Adrian Peterson looking like he's about to.
Oh my God!
Just OJ Sean Payton on the sideline. Like
this is such a good take. This is such a good take, Jordan.
He might because Adrian Peterson has done this before. He might angry run all over the Saints just because.
Wow. I have Adrian Peterson. Wow. I'm telling everyone my strategy for my home league. I have Adrian Peterson in my home league and I am currently have him on my bench, but I am going to put him in my starting lineup because of this narrative you fed me, Jordan. Nothing fuels NFL players like feeling like they've been wronged. And New Orleans Adrian Peterson certainly felt like he was wronged. So much so, I don't even know if it's daring of me to say this, but I'm going to assert my confidence in the Tennessee Titans, and I'm going to pick them to win this game. They're probably going to lose, though, because now that I finally believed in them, they're going to let me down.
I'm going to do the same thing. Like, that's just what's
well, that's the kiss of death. We're fucked.
I mostly just don't know if I can believe in Trevor Siemian being the guy.
Very fair.
That was another like swing and miss that we had that we just didn't have enough information at the time where we're like, oh yeah, this is going to be the
because they paid Taysom Hill like $16 million. They paid him as like an elite quarterback. Like, what are we doing here?
We weren't the only ones that felt that way. Let's just say that much.
Let's just say that. Let's just leave it there. Let's move on. Jacksonville coming off of a gorgeous victory against the Bills, taking on the Colts. What do you like in this game?
So this one's pretty basic. I like Michael Pittman Jr.
How could you not?
Yeah, he's just having a pretty good breakout season despite having pretty uneven QB play. and despite what Jacksonville did to Buffalo last week, we already brought this up. They're still dead last by pass DVOA. So Buffalo really was just like, I don't even know if they made it to the stadium to play the game. They just weren't there. And they've allowed, or Jacksonville has allowed the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. Further, I'll add that Jacksonville is tied for the 2nd most red zone touches allowed to wide receivers in the past 2 weeks. Michael Pittman Jr. has just been the guy. Like he's really blossomed to a nice prospect, and I'm really glad I was high on him during the draft. It makes me feel good.
Well done for you. Yeah, no, I will say I will eat crow in this because I definitely was not high on Michael Pittman in redraft this year. I thought that I did not think it was going to come to fruition and come to what we've seen. I mean, I had no idea he was going to, he's like a top 7 wide receiver right now in half point PPR. I had no idea. I didn't even think he was going to be like a solid wide receiver 2 this year. So good work for all those Michael Pittman truthers out there. Also on the flip side, Tennessee Titans Indianapolis Colts. Forgot who I was talking about. Indianapolis Colts giving up the most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. I feel like this is a Marvin Jones week. I got Marvin Jones ranked as a locked in like wide receiver 2. I think he's my wide receiver 21 this week. Like I got a feeling Marvin Jones is catching at least 1 touchdown, maybe even 2 touchdowns this week. And really in a losing effort, I think the Colts win this game because the Colts have been playing pretty good football recently. But I think Marvin Jones is a very comfortable wide receiver 2 this week against the Colts. Not a bad secondary, but a secondary that's certainly surrendered touchdowns.
Yeah, I was going to go with Jacksonville wide receiver group as well, because I think I stumbled upon that same stat of how many touchdowns Indianapolis has allowed, but I just couldn't be confident enough in picking one of the wide receivers.
It's fair. I mean, it's always shitty putting your faith in a Jaguars player. Like it just feels weird. And I did it for my roast and ghost column, nerdballff.com. Go read it. I picked Dan Arnold as my roast tight end because Dan Arnold, since joining the Jaguars, has averaged like 6 targets a game and 46 yards. And that's including his first game with the Jags where he only had two targets for 2 catches for 29 yards. So like, and he's coming off of back-to-back 60+ yard games. And the Colts can't contain tight ends either. So it feels like it could be a sneaky Dan Arnold game who you could also stream at the tight end position, 34% rostered on Sleeper. Lots of information being thrown your way. So let's pick this game. I confidently have the Colts winning, like I said.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Indianapolis.
Ooh,
I hesitated.
You thought about it.
Because of what I said last week too, is Indianapolis just tends to, I keep picking them and they tend to let me down. So I thought about it for a second.
Think how smart you would look though if you picked the Jaguars to win back-to-back games.
I don't think anybody thinks that's a possibility. Urban Meyers hardly can believe that he won last week.
Urban Meyer thinks that this is it. He's like, I'm done now, right? I can leave. Can I go back to college football now? I really don't want to be here. All right, let's move on to Detroit heading to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. And this might be sacrilege, might be a terrible thing to say, but I am fading Pat Freiermuth in this game. I know that the Lions don't do a lot well, but the one thing that they've done pretty good and pretty consistently this season is limiting tight ends scoring. They're tied for the 3rd fewest receptions, 11th fewest fantasy points per game, and the 4th fewest red zone targets to tight end position. Freiermuth has been on an absolute tear the last couple of weeks, and a lot of that has come from touchdown production and specifically red zone work. Like he has been Ben Roethlisberger's go-to guy when they get in and around the end zone. 40 yards on 4 catches just doesn't have the same weight if it doesn't have that score. And so I think maybe you break in favor of someone else at tight end position if you're looking at Pat Freiermuth, which of course Becca, my wife, is going to kill me for because she just added him and is starting him this week. But I think I would start Dan Arnold over him.
Yeah, my default factory settings are to sit like rookie tight ends that are not named Kyle Pitts. unless they're going on like a really good stretch against teams that are really bad against tight ends, which apparently Detroit isn't. I don't think people will remember this that well, but like 2 years ago, before Kyle Pitts like blew up onto the radar and became the absolute unicorn that he is, Pat Freiermuth was definitely the number one tight end out of college. Like he was hands down the best guy. So while I think he's got a lot of talent and a lot of skill, and I was kind of upset that the Steelers got him, because one thing that you don't really talk about with the Steelers is they always seem to find a pretty good tight end to come in and
good receivers, man. That team, they do a very good job at scouting their pass catching positions.
Yeah, they know exactly what they want for that. Yeah. I would just be more cautious, and Pat Freiermuth next year is probably going to be, he should be a breakout candidate for next year. I'm exercising caution with him just the rest of the way because he's a rookie.
Yeah, that's fair. I am confidently picking the Steelers to win this game. Who do you got?
I'm not picking the Lions.
Remember when we picked them both to beat the Eagles and then they got blown out 44-0? That was fun. Jordan has blocked that out from his memory. Cleveland at New England. Oh, what could have been, Jordan, if only Odell had signed with the Patriots and was able to take on his former team. But alas, I can only dream. What do you like in this game?
I'm going to, again, more tight end talk. Fun.
Tight end position can swing your week. We were on defensives last week. This week it's tight end week. Nothing wrong with it.
This is where you pick up those minute points that help you edge out your opposing player or opposing team in a close game.
Exactly.
It's the tight end and defense special teams plays.
If you're getting blown out, we can't help you. If you're losing close games, that's our niche. That's where we help you.
Exactly. So I'm a little bit skeptical on Hunter Henry this week. I will say this depends heavily on whether or not Cleveland's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah plays. He's been on IR with an ankle injury. He was only designated to return yesterday. So that means he has about 21 days to be like fully elevated and on the active roster. Otherwise, he has to go back to IR for the remainder of the season. But he's been there since week 6. So it's been a couple weeks now. There's no guarantee he'll play this week, but with Cleveland has been pretty bad without JOK against tight ends. I don't know if that's necessarily links up, if that's just a weird coincidence, but I like to think that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, given his skill set, given how they kind of like to play him in the box, he's probably one of the people who was covering a lot of their tight ends and holding them in check. But over the past 2 weeks, Cleveland has allowed the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. Hunter Henry has been tight end 8 this season, but just the last few games, he's had 10 points, 4 points, and 10 PPR points. So I'm overall not very confident with him in being that guy that you want to have produce. If you're like Pete, you can look towards other guys like Dan Arnold who might have a good game, or there are other tight ends out there that I might want to look at first instead of Hunter Henry. He's got the timeshare issues, and if JOK comes back from injury and is designated as like that rover guy, the guy that's going to lock up running backs and tight ends, then I'm very skeptical on Hunter Henry having a big week unless he scores a touchdown or something, which I don't know. Seems a little dubious.
Well, he is the definition of like a touchdown dependent player. Since week 6, he's gone over 20 yards. Like he's had 25 yards, 23 yards, 33 yards, and 19 yards, all of which on 2 catches. And in 4 of those 5 games, he scored a touchdown, and that's great. And that gives him, tight end fantasy viability. If he doesn't score a touchdown, though, the yardage and the target share just isn't enough to sustain not scoring a touchdown. And I think you're right that with Cleveland's defense getting healthier, with JOK coming back, that certainly doesn't bode well for the potential of a touchdown for Hunter Henry. I like this call. I think that's a good call. I do think, though, because I can't pick against them, the Patriots win this game. They're at home. Mac Jones eating a Big Mac on Baker.
I'm going to pick the Browns, not to be spiteful, but I like the Browns because I think they're going to run the ball pretty well on New England.
Yeah, I added Dearness Johnson and am starting Dearness Johnson with the confidence of Dearness Johnson finishing as a high-end RB2 this week. So I will be stress watching him run all over the Patriots defense.
Yeah, I would expect, I mean, knock on wood, I think Chubb's going to be activated from the COVID list because he's vaccinated. So he won't miss 10 games, 10 weeks, 10 days. God damn, 10 days.
A whole year?
Some other people. I was so excited to just have Aaron Rodgers catch a stray during that bit that I couldn't finish it. Damn it.
Oh, man. All right, let's move on to the afternoon games. Minnesota at Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. Man, we just can't get away from tight ends this week. We're helping you in the margins, people. That's how we play. Tyler Conklin, sneaky stream this week. If you got one of these tight ends who we're not super high on, Tyler Conklin has had 7 targets and 5 catches in back-to-back games, and both times has gone over 45 yards. And during that period of time, he's seen 23% of the team's target share, which is second only behind Thielen. The Chargers has given up the 6th most points per game to tight ends, over 10 yards per target, second most to the position. And so with Conklin getting 7 targets a game and he's getting 10 yards per target, that's a solid 70 yards right there. Please and thank you. Other than that, this game feels pretty chalk. Outside of this maybe being a down Thielen game, because the Chargers defense is really stingy against wide receivers, allowing just 4 touchdowns. And that's basically what you need for Adam Thielen in order to return solid fantasy value is for him to score touchdowns. But outside of that, no one else stands out to me as a clear and obvious play.
Yeah, this one has all the makings of a game that you are probably going to be tuned in and interested in because of all the fantasy implications, but it's kind of filled with a bunch of guys that you're just kind of going to start because they're like a permanent fixture. They're just guys that you have to start, otherwise you completely miss the wagon. I like Tyler Conklin. I think he's really good. I think he's one of those players that and not to give the Vikings too much credit, but I think he is one of those players that if he was on a different team, given a larger opportunity, because he has been playing behind Irv Smith Jr. for the most part, and behind Kyle Rudolph before that. But I think he could be a number one guy on a team that knows how to use him. Yeah. Another fade, actually, I'll say this week is Mike Williams.
I like Mike Williams this week. Tell me why you're fading him.
I just think because unless his medicals come back a little bit better, since he's hurt his knee, he's kind of been struggling. Yeah. So he hasn't been the lights out wide receiver 1 Mike Williams, the one that's about to get paid a boatload of money in the offseason, Mike Williams.
Yeah, the injury is something that's a really good point. The last 2 weeks, though, he has run more or less toe to toe with Keenan Allen in terms of routes run and snaps played. And so it's just been the fact that the targets aren't coming to him. It's not that his role has decreased in terms of he's being, not on the field as much or not being told to run as many routes. And going up against the Vikings boundary corners, who are not good and have given up a lot of yards and touchdowns, I do feel like this could be a bounce back game for him. I actually have him as my roast this week for wide receivers. So I am putting my money where my mouth is. And I think that he will bounce back this week. But the knee injury is certainly you never want to. This is why I'm always tepid about Julio Jones and where to rank Julio Jones, because when someone has, especially a wide receiver, has a lingering injury, it just takes a small tweak for that receiver to then be done for the day. And you're like, well, shit, that sucks. So the injury is certainly worth noting.
Yeah, especially with a player that he tends to do a couple of things really well, and having a banged up knee for a wide receiver is just not good.
Just not great
in general. But Mike Williams is a guy that likes to jump over,
likes to put his body on the line.
He's laying out for balls and everything. And if he can't do that comfortably, then he's kind of a normal wide receiver out there.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Pick this game, Jordan. I'm going to let you go first so that I have time to debate.
I'm gonna go with the Chargers, but I feel like the Chargers are favorites and Minnesota will cover though. that's my cop-out answer.
That's your cop-out answer. Nice. Yeah. I like it.
Chargers win outright, but the Vikings cover.
For the Vikings cover. Part of me really wants to. I'm going to do it. I'm going to ride the depressing train of being a Vikings fan. I'll go with the Vikings here. I feel like the Chargers always have a couple of just dud games in them. We've seen a couple already. And the Vikings have been playing decent football. I'm going to go with the Vikings. I'm talking myself into it, and I'm in. Plus, Tyler Conklin's going for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that'll single-handedly win the game. Arizona Cardinals hosting Carolina, the now Cam Newton-led Carolina Panthers. Stupid Odell Beckham taking away the headlines from Cam Newton returning to Carolina to play with the Panthers. I don't think he's starting this week. I'm pretty sure Matt Rule has come out and said that PJ Walker will be starting for the Panthers this week. But gotta love me some Cam Newton back in Carolina. But Jordan, what do you like in this game?
Yeah, the true lead for the NFL News Day was Cam Newton getting signed back to Carolina on a contract that could be worth up to $10 million.
$10 million,
which is insane.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
Cam Newton secure the bag.
Well done. Like the Panthers are paying
to that.
Yeah, I think Roger Sherman of The Ringer tweeted this out, where it's like the Panthers are paying Cam Newton's replacement, Cam Newton's replacement's replacement, and Cam Newton to replace the replacement's replacement. Like Panthers really, really locked this in and are doing a bang up job. 10 mil. Well done, Cam.
It was a fun first month of the season for them. So in this matchup, I've had a really tumultuous relationship with this player in fantasy. But I'm firing up Jim Connor.
Let's do it, Jimmy.
He's going to be the lead back since Chase Edmonds is out. Connor's the bell cow. Now again, I feel like his success this season has been because he isn't the bell cow. We've seen how that has worked in Pittsburgh, where it's just like, we're going to run James Conner 25 times into the back of our offensive line. But we've seen that's kind of like how Pittsburgh wants to operate with Najee Harris. They're just trying to figure out as many creative ways that they can run the ball as possible because they can't do anything else. But I think with like the threat of Kyler Murray and with Benjamin, who's a pretty good backup to himself, pitching in
good.
Relief. Yeah, for James Conner. I think that the running situation in Arizona will be a little bit better for him. Carolina has been stout on defense, but they are 19th against the run by DVOA, and they've allowed the third most rushing yards to running backs over the past month. So it's that's kind of coincided with the I guess the graceful downfall of Carolina after a really good first month of the season. Connor is only 19th in DVOA among all running backs, but like to put that into perspective, he's ahead of guys like Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook, like two staple guys. The latter, maybe not so much anymore, but two staple guys that you just plug into your lineup without even thinking about. They're just running backs that are there. More impressive than his 19th ranked DVOA is that he's actually 11th in defense adjusted yards above replacement. So he's been a pretty efficient running back this year, which is not something you could have said about James Conner in the past. So I like James Conner this week against Carolina. It's kind of a no-brainer start for me.
Yeah, I think he's a locked in like elite. I know Nick, who does our running back rankings on NerdBall, he has him ranked as his running back 6 this week, and I think that like he is a mid to high RB1 this week. And if you have him, good on you, because he looked obviously really good against the 49ers. Yeah, I'm picking the Cardinals with ease. I think if Cam Newton was there, I still would pick the Cardinals, but PJ Walker, good for you for being in the NFL, PJ Walker, but you're not beating the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Arizona as well.
All right, let's move on. Philadelphia Eagles heading to Denver to take on the Broncos. And I am sitting Cortland Sutton this week. I'm not fading him. I am straight up moving him to my bench. He's had 3 tough games with the return of Jerry Jeudy, and it's just absolutely nuked his target share. He's gone from 23.7% through weeks 1 through 7, which was first on the team, to just 12. He's seen 12% of the targets over the last 2 weeks, which is 6 on the Broncos. And again, you're playing a good Eagles defense. The Eagles are allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers. Darius Slayton on the outside has been really solid. He's allowing a 67% completion percentage against them and has only given up 3 touchdowns in coverage. I said this last week about Mike Williams, excuse me. Eagles are not a defense that you're going to bounce back against. Mike Williams put up an okay game, but still wasn't great. He was like the wide receiver, I think 30 or 40, or like in that 30-40 range in half point PPR. Cortland Sutton, I think he hasn't been seeing the targets. And even with the targets he saw throughout the year, he hasn't been super efficient with them. He's had one of the worst neck ratings, which is our consistency rating over on NerdBall, amongst the top 30 wide receivers in half point PPR. So hasn't been super consistent, is not getting any work right now, and playing a really good matchup. So, or a really tough defense. I am not in on Cortland Sutton this week.
Yeah. Having Cortland Sutton be 6th on the team in target share should be enough for Vic Fangio to lose.
Yeah, that's a crime.
I'm not saying he should be number 1 because Jerry Jeudy's pretty good. Noah Fant's pretty good. Tim Patrick is pretty good, but 6th is that's still somebody in there.
When your backup tight end is getting more targets than your like stud number 1 wide receiver, that's not great.
Yeah. And Darius Slay has been playing some pretty good football. Yeah, Cortland Sutton seems to be a hit or miss for me.
Yeah. He's definitely he's not consistent and not efficient. This is a tough game to pick though, because these are both teams that I just have no real gauge on them nor faith in them. Like, I guess Broncos at home is where I would lean towards. I'm really waiting for you to make the pick, Jordan, so I can see how it sits with me.
I think I'm going to pick Denver. My man Teddy KGB has been playing some pretty good football. Plus, I don't think Philadelphia is good.
I don't think so either. They're such an enigma to me.
They love Nick Sirianni. I think he's like a great spiritual leader for that locker room, but I don't know if he's a head coach.
Don't get me started on Nick Sirianni.
I think he might end up keeping his job for a couple of years because of vibes. Like, he's just going to pass a vibe check and people are going to love him for it,
which is going to be not great for a team's future success. All right. I think I'm going to go with Denver too. I don't know what this Eagles team is, and I'm not betting on this Eagles team until I can gauge what they are. Seattle Seahawks heading to Green Bay to take on the Packers. And while we didn't get Patrick Mahomes versus Aaron Rodgers last week, because Aaron Rodgers doesn't believe in the COVID vaccine, we do get Russell Wilson coming back from a busted finger and his nano bubbles curing it, to Aaron Rodgers back on the field because his herbal healing remedies are, I guess, maybe working. Whatever Joe Rogan prescribed him did the trick. So that should be a good quarterback matchup.
Yeah, good quarterback matchup. The Packers have been allowing a lot of rushing yards to running quarterbacks, and that's not really Russell Wilson's first instinct. Isn't really to scramble after his first or second read isn't there and like take off to pick up the first down, but we know he can. So I like Russell Wilson this week. I like Aaron Rodgers this week if he actually plays, but I'm fading Aaron Jones this week. Jones has had just more than a few lackluster performances this week. Sleeper has him as the PPR running back 8, but he's just been used in a different format. In non-PPR leagues, I'm sure he's worse than that. 29th overall is what he is in non-PPR leagues. And
wow,
that's because the huge disparity there is because Aaron Jones is just not getting a lot done in the rushing game. Like, he's not running the ball a lot. He has one 100-yard game this season, and that came back in week 5 against Cincinnati. The rest of his work, I mean, he does have games of 11 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets. Like, he's been getting some work in the passing game, but you want to be able to fire him up knowing that he will get you some rushing game production, because AJ Dillon is right there on the depth chart, and AJ Dillon's good on the ground. So you don't want him to get into a true like 50-50 split with AJ Dillon. You kind of want to keep it at like 60-40. Because his snap percentage has been roughly 63-65%. Seattle has been surprisingly stout against running backs. They're allowing the 29th most fantasy points to running backs this season. or sorry, the 29th fewest points to running backs this season, and they've allowed the fourth fewest. Wait, why am I saying that right? They're allowing the fourth fewest points to running backs this season and the fourth fewest rushing yards over the past month to running backs. I will have to mention that does include the bye there, so it's not those numbers are not an average basis, but you got to think maybe it's because Seattle just consistently plays like 7 and 8 man boxes by having Jamal Adams down by the goal line, but that's just Seattle's been decent against the run. So I'm worried about Aaron Jones's production this week. I'm a little bit, I don't know, if he doesn't have a good game on the ground, then he's kind of floundering in like a weird purgatory for running backs.
Yeah, AJ Dillon has just looked really good running the football, and it's clear that kind of mentality, and it could be partially because we've seen it a lot because you had Devontae Adams miss a game, you had Jordan Love start a game, and so Matt LaFleur was like, all right, we're gonna put in our big bruising back and we're just gonna pound the football. But it's been effective. Like, it hasn't looked bad. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a strategy that they continue to utilize. And if they do, it certainly caps what Aaron Jones can do, because really then it all leaves him to like production in the passing game, which he's been kind of hit or miss on, because also AJ Dillon could do that. So I like this call a lot in terms of fading Aaron Jones. And I think we have him ranked as our like outside of RB1 territory. I have him ranked, I will say, outside of RB1 territory this week because of it. So first time I've done that all year.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too, is like with the Devontae Adams injury, Robert Tonyan is out for the rest of the year. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has been on the injury list. Like, Aaron Jones's job and his role in the offense has just changed because he's got to compensate for some of the things that other players have done. And that might mean sacrificing some handoffs for Aaron Jones and just kind of maybe being a toy guy or something like that. So he's definitely got more to do, but I don't know if that's helping his fantasy value right now.
Yep. All right, pick this game. I am going to, with Aaron Rodgers back, I'll pick the Packers. I like him to beat the Seahawks at home. Let's see how much faith Jordan has in his own team. He's even wearing the hoodie. You're even wearing the Green Bay hoodie, Jordan.
That was incidental. Either Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and can't breathe, or Russell Wilson is going to come back and can't grip the football and throw it the way he wants to. I guess I'll pick Green Bay though.
Look at that. What a true fan. A reluctant hero. All right, Sunday Night Football. Kansas City Chiefs heading to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. I am confidently starting Hunter Renfrow this week in fantasy. He's had at least 5 catches in all but one game this year. Back-to-back games with 7 catches on 8+ targets. Chiefs pass defense we know is terrible. They're ranked 28th in NEF rating. Slot corner L'Jarius Sneed is allowing 450 yards and 3 touchdowns and 112 passer rating. Also, Twitter meme Daniel Sorensen is just terrible in the slot. So we all know that he can be taken advantage of there. And that's obviously where Hunter Renfrow works out of and does his damage. So I like him. I have him ranked, I think, as a fringe wide receiver 2 this week. Definitely a top end flex option, and someone who in PPR leagues, like, he is a lock and play in PPR leagues for the rest of the season.
My favorite my favorite tweet that I saw on the internet today was 2 graph images. One was like the amount of yards per game or something that Kansas City has allowed, and the number of snaps that Daniel Sorensen has, and like the number of yards they've allowed has just gone down with the fewer snaps that Daniel Sorensen gets, which is like,
poor Daniel Sorensen. I mean, the guy's a professional football player, so like, I mean, good for him. Good, you're getting paid to play a sport. Like, even if you're bad at it, it's better than everyone else. Everyone on Twitter who's giving you shit is jealous that they don't have your job.
Yeah, so I think this is just a bad season for him because we've seen him play effectively before.
Right, he hasn't been this. Yeah, this definitely feels like it's a bad season for him. I like both running backs against the Chiefs, both Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. But Kenyon Drake saw his role shift as a pass catcher with Josh Jacobs coming back last week against the Giants. He had 8 targets and 6 catches on 70 yards, and the Chiefs are allowing the 5th most receiving yards to running backs. So I think Kenyon Drake is also a solid start this week too.
Yeah.
Does KC get right, Jordan?
No, I'm picking the Raiders.
Oh my goodness. I like this.
I genuinely think that the Packers last week against Kansas City with Jordan Love in were playing not to lose rather than playing to win. And I think if Aaron Rodgers was in that game, they would have won by 14 points.
Blown the Chiefs out.
Yeah, it would have been a tough look for Kansas City this week. Like, people would have had questions for sure about what's going on there, but they eked out a win. And I think Las Vegas kind of humbles them.
Yeah. They lost to I got the Giants call. But maybe damn it. I'm going to stick with God damn it, Jordan. Now you're in my head. I wanted to say the Chiefs just because I was like, oh, this feels like a nice win for me, but you're right. I mean, Vegas, I think I'm still going to say Chiefs because they just have Patrick Mahomes, but damn, they are really not looking good. And it's mostly due to Patrick Mahomes. Monday Night Football. Let's wrap it up. Los Angeles Rams, led by Odell Beckham, the greatest wide receiver the world has ever known, against San Francisco 49ers. What you got, Jordan?
I should have went a little bit more sneaky and said something like Brandon Ayuk, who's out of the doghouse.
I do like Brandon Ayuk this week.
He's out of the doghouse until he goes back in. That's just the way it is. This week, though, it seemed pretty simple. Fire up Matthew Stafford. I would say actually fire him up in a big way. Not necessarily that simple. San Francisco is 25th in passing DVOA, and they've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. I think the defensive mystique around San Francisco is kind of worn off. 2 years removed from their Super Bowl run where they're absolutely owning the line of scrimmage. That's just not the case anymore. They've got guys like Josh Norman getting bad taunting calls and just not playing very good defense. Conversely, the Rams are 3rd by pass DVOA, and they probably are. We talked about this at the top. I will say they probably built the 2nd best wide receiver room in football. I would put them neatly behind Tampa Bay, maybe a hair over Dallas. But
especially if Odell can return to anything like we've seen before, continue.
He either returns to form or he gets incredibly mad that Matthew Stafford is just still peppering Cooper Kupp with targets and Odell is being sent on fly routes down the field. That's but anyway, Stafford, and I'm picking the Rams over the Niners because I don't think the Niners are good this year. Yeah, I'm going to pick the Rams as well, and I love firing up Matty Stafford, who's like this. The Rams are not only positioning themselves to be Super Bowl favorites, they are going all in for the Super Bowl this year. They're also positioning that this could be Matt Stafford MVP season because he's been playing some exceptional football this year, and you gotta tip your cap to that. So yeah, the Rams beating the 49ers. There you go. That is starts and sits for week 10. Before we go, it is time for Wheel of Conditions. Wheel of Conditions. Wheel of Conditions. Wheel of Conditions. Where, of course, we spin the wheel of conditions and draft a DFS lineup for the main Sunday slate with those conditions. We sadly lost last week. We were on a roll, but it did not continue. Maybe this week we will get right. Let's see what you got, Wheel. Draft a team in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
That's gonna be hard to do if we have to budget. But
this is gonna be both amazing and possibly impossible. So, but let's get situated.
Wait, do we know which games we can't pick? That's the thing that will
that will always slow us down.
The strategy. All right. No Ravens.
No Dolphins. No
Dolphins,
Chiefs,
which is
no
easy.
Raiders, and no Rams or 49ers.
All
right. You ready?
Yeah.
We hit submit as soon as the clock ends, even if it's an unfinished lineup. All right, ready? Here we go. Clock starts. Quarterback. Who do you like?
Rodgers or Wilson.
Okay, good. Let's go with
or Dak.
Dak is. Let's start with Dak, and we'll see how we price out running backs. I think we go with
James Conner. Oh wait, no, we can't do him.
Oh,
But yeah, we can.
Yeah, where is he? James Conner, 100%. Like that call. I like Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yeah, fire him up.
All right, perfect. Wide receiver. Devontae Adams. Yeah, good. Then some cheap. We need some cheap guys now.
What about Tim Patrick? Getting more targets than Cortland Sutton.
It's true. Mike Williams, Emmanuel Sanders, Russell Gage, Marvin Jones. Definitely Marvin Jones. Wait, no! Bring me back to Marvin Jones. Where the fuck was he? I missed him. Marvin Jones. Definitely Marvin Jones. All right, give me one more wide receiver, Jordan.
Let's go with.
Should we go Deontay Harris real cheap?
Sure, why not?
All right, Deontay Harris. Don't let us down.
We basically just got to pick guys from
who we just said. Oh my God, we have 45 seconds. What do you want? Tight end, Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bingo. Defense. Let's pick defense quickly. Tennessee.
Buffalo.
Perfect. Okay, Buffalo. We're going all in on Buff. 30 seconds. Scroll down. Our flex is Zach Ertz, DeAndre Carter, Benny Snell, Tajay Sharp. Oh boy, this is rough. Pat Freiermuth. I just said don't start him. Dan Arnold. Let's fucking do it.
Let's do it. 2 tight ends. Let's roll.
Enter lineup. We did it. 12 seconds to spare. Oh, wow. That was exhilarating.
Electrifying stuff.
Electrifying content
from the audio medium. I'm sure people are just sweating with their headphones in, or if they're in their car. It's like, fuck, are they going to do it?
Whew, I am sweating. That was a lot. All right. Well, that's all we got for you this week. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast and your podcast platform of choice. Drop us 5 stars. It helps us get in front of more people. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself at Peter M. Rogers. Follow Jordan at Jordan_Smith27. And make sure you check out all the amazing content we have over on the site, NerdBallFF.com. We've got rankings. We got starts and sits. We have DFS plays. We got everything you could possibly need to set a winning lineup for week 10. Until next week, my fellow nerds.